I'm Vikram Rao.
I'm Alistair Lamb.
I've been with Google since 2013, working as a solutions engineer on our large customer ads business, and I recently moved over to the cloud side.
I joined DoubleClick in 2000, so yes, I do know where a lot of those bodies are buried, if I can remember them these days. Do you feel like selling the ShamWow, by the way? I'm ready. And I joined Cloud a few years ago, and been helping Cloud and ads with their analysis.
So we're here on behalf of the marketing technology specialist team, customer engineering team, and we're basically a team of sales engineers with pretty extensive marketing and ad tech backgrounds, and we work specifically with Google Cloud's customers to help them use a more data-driven approach to their marketing and business decision-making.
Yeah, and yes, collectively, we do know where all the bodies are buried, but you know, I'm a former New Yorker, now living in Colorado. How about you, Vikram?
I'm from Chicago.
So you know how we roll. And on top of that, really, like, we know we're keeping you away from happy hour and the chain smokers.
And Spinderella.
Spinnerella, yes, our boss's favorite. So we are going to try to keep you entertained. All right, so those aha moments. Really, at the end of the day, why are they so important? Because insights to driving profits, they explain what our customers are doing, and then they often make us shine in our personal career. Like, often that's what people are going to remember us by, especially since I'm no longer the pretty boy on the team, Vikram. So.
Hey, I'm smart too.
Yeah, so here's a scenario. How many of us have actually used multiple devices for a sign-up process? So don't raise your hands yet, but say you got your phone on your desk, it's charging, you're browsing the net on your desktop, then an email verification comes up, right? It's asking us as we're surfing, you've got to sign up for the account. How many of us have actually just reached out to your phone and say, okay, right now, I'm going to verify on my phone versus surfing on the desktop? All right, that's pretty good. It's about 40% of us. Guess what just happened there? You lost 25 to 40% credit to your marketing channels because of cross-device, when you truly think about that. I mean, that's really powerful when you think about that. And it seems like basic and common sense, but it's really easy to miss these use cases. If we don't have the right setup and we don't have our data analyzed, it can easily be done and you missed it. So in fact, we recently helped a customer get about this 25 to 40% credit back to their marketing channels just because we told them they need to actually inject their customer ID earlier on into this process. Here you go, Vikram.
All right, so why cloud? You know, despite all the hype, I think this question is still one worth asking. Isn't cloud all about VMs and cores and Kubernetes? How is this cloud stuff relevant to me as a marketer? You know, I have ROI goals to hit, I have leads to generate, brands to build. So in the marketing space, there is a SaaS or a point solution for pretty much everything. You know, DMPs, CDPs, bid optimizers. So I think it's reasonable to ask, why should I do this on cloud? So to me, this is a bit like what the marketing landscape looks like right now. It's kind of like a 2 a.m. infomercial full of one-off solutions that only solve for their own specific data sets and their own specific use cases. So if all you need to do is core a pineapple or slice an avocado, or I'm not really sure what's going on with the corn over there, but the point solutions work fine. You know, sometimes they even work great. But ultimately, that data is all siloed, and it can't really be combined in a meaningful way to solve the problems outside of a narrow, certain scope. And at the end of the day, that's not really the promise of why we're collecting all this data. So as a result of this fragmentation, less than 0.5% of data is actually analyzed. And we have tons of data, more than ever before, but it's all locked away in these individual tools. And we all know that in some sort of abstract, sort of academic way that data is a quote-unquote good thing. But we really need to analyze way more of it to actually make it part of our business decision-making. Like 0.5%, that's embarrassing. And so why is such little data analyzed? As much as I wanted to blame it on GDPR, I couldn't. 81% of marketers feel like they don't have a single view of their customers, meaning they can't connect their data sets together, right? That's basic stuff. Raw data needs to be ingested, transformed, manipulated, just to make actual use of it. And that dirty, unsexy work of transforming data, it isn't just important, it could be the critical difference between being able to use that data and not.
So I got to interrupt you. You missed something. Slide before, you said a lot less of it probably is being analyzed in the EU, too.
So on top of that, doing data analysis work nowadays usually requires a lot of technical skills, right? There's a recent study that said there's almost 200,000 unfilled data science roles. So the obvious answer is yes, let's hire those people. But that requires time, and it requires a pipeline of PhDs. And if we're actually going to make data-driven decision-making part of our core business, like today and not 2 years from now, we need to reduce that time and effort to get to an insight, to get to the aha moment that Alistair was talking about. And that's where Google Cloud can help. I think we can take you from this to this. So like a good set of chef's knives, Google Cloud will give you a general purpose set of tools to be able to bring together data from a bunch of different sources and tackle the problems that actually matter for you. And with a little bit of training, you can accomplish more than what you can with the sum of those point solutions. And so in the rest of this talk, we'll aim to give you a little bit of knife skills, I guess, and that you can hopefully start taking back with you and putting into action.
So I told him I'd make him suffer for the corny jokes, so a little secret. This guy used to be the kid that sold all those Ginsu knives door to door. So yes, he still gets a cut of it, and boy, it's damn annoying during team meetings. Man.
Yeah, I call it entrepreneurship, man. So Google has a long history of dealing with big data. It's kind of what we do. Right? In the field of database and analytics, we're often several years ahead of the industry, proving out technology internally on our consumer-facing businesses like Gmail, Maps, Docs, and crucially, marketing products like analytics, ads, and more. Actually, Alistair was just telling me the other day that Dremel, which is Google's internal version of BigQuery, was specifically designed for user pathing analysis and click fraud detection, and now it's used for pretty much everything. So now with GCP, you can take advantage of the same tools that Google uses, but for your own data. So Google's also in kind of a unique position to understand what marketers are solving for, right? Like, we're a digital media partner to a number of companies, both large and small, and we understand what marketers are sort of, what their challenges are, what their goals are, and we want to partner with you to help bring those solutions to life. So much of our big data tech, like I talked about Dremel, much of the big data tech has been devised internally for storing and analyzing marketing data. That was the core use case. And our ecosystem also provides a lot of unique native integrations like the BigQuery data transfer service, and that's something that Alistair will actually demo for you later on.
All right, great, thank you. So yeah, step one, really identify all of those important data sets, and just counting them up, there's about 10 here, but you probably have maybe in the hundreds. The biggest first step is to collect it. So collect that data, ingest it, cleanse it, and aggregate it as needed. But the beauty of cloud is you actually don't need to aggregate it. We can handle that scale. We handle that raw data. And so why is that important? It's because it becomes super powerful when you actually transform and analyze it to understand your customers. So that cross-device use case that I gave you earlier, it's just not possible to do without unaggregated data and looking through sessions. You have to be able to look through sessions to understand what your customer's doing. You layer on top of that machine learning, and then you have advanced analysis. You want to predict things like customer lifetime values as soon as people land on your website, focus on things like your at-risk customers, and then finally invest in those highest impact activities, sales, so like those Ginsu knives, right? So finally, you visualize it, and then you want to activate on it. So simple terms for me, see it, sell it. See it, sell it. And then really similar to those aha moments, at the end of the day, because of that cross-device workflow, we might not be crediting all of our sales back to marketing. Well, it starts leading to other questions, like, are we actually crediting the right channels? We might have an attribution tool to help do it, but at least we can then validate those results and see that all within cloud. On top of that, we can break out those attribution models and go beyond their limitations and really experiment on it. So with that, who doesn't want to predict the future? About predicting, say, the value of every customer interactions. How about forecasting and promoting new offers to a website? Could lead to kind of less website outages, right, Vikram? All right. So what happens to your business, say, if you double your video ad spend? What happens if you triple your TV or radio spend? So by forecasting those outcomes, we can be a step ahead of those challenges to our business. And then not only is it about engaging and identifying the right customer, but it's also about personalizing that message and when to send it. Like, I grew up with the adage that timing is everything. And so in an example, I love to tell stories. One of our colleagues, Keith, who's out in APAC, recently he got engaged, and he gave me his permission to tell this story. So all throughout that process, he was petrified and would not let his girlfriend see his computer or phone because ads started showing up about all engagement items. And so he didn't want her to find out at all. And so he was actually proud of the industry and the targeting that was done. But the problem was, as soon as he was engaged, and I'm pretty happy that she said yes, otherwise it'd kind of be embarrassing on our team meetings, but he kept seeing the same engagement ads over and over again. So in that point, it would have been good, because it is a really high-priced segment of that audience, then say, no longer have that targeting there, so do a negative list on it, but better yet, let's change the message. And instead, let's actually start putting messages about wedding planning or honeymoon ads up. And so what we're going to show you is that GCP can help with that timing. So on that, it's the connected platform of the future, and it's going to allow you to accomplish all those use cases that we talked about before. Data volumes are only going to get bigger, and we're going to need to architect for that future. And on top of that, we need to build for those challenges. Ultimately, cloud, and it really is, coupled with the talent of you and your teams, are going to be the ones to make you find those aha moments and act on them and at the right time. So I'm a true believer in this product. BigQuery is at the center of this.
All right. So what we'd like to do now is take you through a fictional case study. And in our case, we're going to focus on the hotel industry. And so first of all, I should emphasize that I'm by no means a hotel industry expert. But the reason we decided to explore this use case was because we felt it had a couple aspects that were universal and could be applied to other verticals as well. You know, for one, customer acquisition and loyalty is a huge factor in growth. Personalization of the customer experience is a major key to success. And finally, the hotel industry is actually facing a lot of competitors more than ever before, especially those that are digital natives and know this stuff inside and out. So we'll talk about some industry trends. We'll identify a business problem that has tangible value, and then we'll use data to derive a strategy to actually engage with our customers. To execute on that strategy, we'll take advantage of a variety of GCP's data analytics tools. And finally, we'll finish up by activating our customer base via some of Google Marketing Platform's tools. So let's get started. So hotel bookings are actually doing great. You know, people are traveling more than ever, especially if trying to get a room in San Francisco is any indication. So people are traveling more than ever before, but margins are actually pretty tight. You know, increasing costs are taking a toll on hotel profits. And so one such source of this pressure is something called online travel agencies, or OTAs. Think of the types of websites that aggregate hotel rooms and from a bunch of different providers. So OTAs are, they're driving a lot of sales for hotels, which is great. And they're responsible for a larger and larger share of hotel bookings. But they're also taking a larger share of each booking, meaning that the amount of commission that hotels are having to pay is going up and up and up. Originally, commissions were between 5 and 10%, and now they're almost upwards of 30%. So while OTAs have clearly contributed to growth, they're providing a valuable service. They definitely represent a non-trivial cost when it comes to acquiring customers for these hotels. So if I'm a hotel, what can I do to drive margins? One way is to drive direct purchases, right? Where customers book directly through me. And hotels are bound by something called rate parity agreements. And these are agreements with the individual OTAs that they work with, that they have the same rate across all of the partners that they work with, right? And the exemption there is for direct purchases. So hotels can offer discounts to people who book directly through them. So with all that groundwork laid on the industry scenario, let's dive into the specifics of our use case. So in our case, we have a wonderful hotel company called Next Hotels Incorporated. You may recognize one of their properties. And they're aimed at a bunch of different segments. They've got a couple different properties nationally. Some aimed at the more price-conscious traveler, some aimed at the deluxe business traveler, some aimed at the super luxurious guest. And they're targeting multiple audiences as a result of that. And so we have our objective, right? Based off of the industry knowledge we have, we want to use a data-driven approach to grow our profit margins, and we think we can potentially do this by driving direct purchases.
All right, collect that data. So what's important is for our next hotel example, we have mocked up some data. First, it's loyalty program data. And don't worry, we actually didn't use real names for this. Then we have hotel properties, and I got to give you credit, Vikram, for these names. So the first one is Productive Suites, and where's that located?
In Chicago.
All right.
Very productive there.
Yeah, Luxury. You put in LA. Okay, I get that. Nice to stay, San Diego. This one I don't get. ValueTel. You put that in Miami.
It's expensive, man.
No. And then Family Inn. By the way, that's where I stay, and we got that in Seattle there. So with the next step, we've got web analytics data that we've mocked up as well, and then room booking information. And all of that's going into BigQuery, which is serverless, highly scalable, and it's basically the low-cost data warehouse. Just to give you a little bit of experience of BigQuery and why that I feel it's revolutionary, like we're talking about the importance of timing. One of the most difficult things to really work on is attribution. And why attribution? Because it's really all timing based. You have a click event, you have some other event going on your website, and then you have the sale. And attribution is basically, let's say, in that time period of, say, 30 days, that was double clicks, ultimate last click type of look back window attribution. It's actually fairly difficult to look at the time of something that has happened in a click, something that happened on your site, then that driving your conversion activity given what. Well, what's exciting to me when I see it is that we're able to shrink all of that code that took years and years to develop into about 50 lines or less of code on BigQuery. So why is that really important? Because one, that data stays within BigQuery. You don't have to move it around. You don't have to drive it, put it somewhere else. It's really powerful and quick when you can actually just analyze that within the database. It's quick, it scales, it's cost effective, and also it's easy. 50 lines of code, like pretty much anyone can pick that up with enough time to look at. And then it opens up a lot more similar use cases that we have that are time-based. So, of it all, when we look at it, time-based analysis, it becomes one of the hardest challenges, but BigQuery really revolutionizes that for us. So Why should we move that data around, especially when data already sits at Google? Let us do that heavy lifting and move that data into BigQuery for you with BigQuery Data Transfer Service.
When was the last time you did any heavy lifting, Alistair? Come on.
No, heavy lifting's for you youngsters, man. All the OGs know what I'm talking about. So, all right. So it moves around the following, and bear with me because I'm still learning all of these. Google Ads, which is now which is now the new AdWords. Google Marketing Platform, which is the DoubleClick brand of suites, including Analytics and Analytics 360. Google Ad Manager, which was formerly DoubleClick for publishers, and YouTube, which I doubt will ever get rebranded. Maybe we give it another shot at G+? What do you think, Vikram?
What's G+?
Yeah, either repressed memory or he's too young for that one, man. So, no way. We've got a couple other alpha products, though. So, the old DoubleClick search is in alpha as well, and also I think Google Play Store, right? Yep, Google Play Store is in alpha as well. All right, so next, I have a demo, so if we don't mind switching to the demo screen. Great. So this is the BigQuery UI, and so in here, it really is as easy as clicking on this transfers button. And in here, the first screen that you will have at one point in time is an enablement screen. So you'll have to click away and enable that with your rights. But after that, it's as easy as hitting Add Transfer and selecting the options of the data source that we have. So the one that I'll just show you really quickly is the DCM data transfer or Google Marketing Platforms data transfer. You select the destination, which is essentially one of the data sets on the left. And then you put in the display name. By the way, that was not the thing that you're looking at. It was another brand name of, let's say, a sporting goods store. So that was not on purpose, so you'll get that. The cloud storage bucket is where your DoubleClick data transfer files are stored, and then the DoubleClick identifier. And all you have to do from there is hit the add, and you're all done. There are some advanced features in here, like you can push those messages to a pub subtopic and also have those emails sent out to you to notify that they've been loaded for the day. When we look at the transfers, again, what I wanted to highlight to you as well is that there is a scheduled backfill button. So within DCM data, or campaign manager is the new name for it without the DoubleClick portion, you can go back 60 days and immediately import that data as long as your data transfer files are there. AdWords has no limitations, so as long as you had AdWords and have reporting, you can backfill as far back as you can from that as well. All right, so from there, I also want to show you Analytics 360 is a little bit different. It isn't part of the BigQuery data transfer service, but it's built right into Analytics itself. So within the Analytics home screen, it's actually in the Admins tab. And inside the Admins tab, it is, sorry about that, a little fat fingers here. So let me just back up and go in here. I knew not to do it. It's the home screen. So Admins tab, one more time. And in the middle, it's actually in the All Products, and it's actually in BigQuery. So you select that link in there, put in your BigQuery project, you select a few views, a few other pieces of information, decide the streaming, and then hit confirm. Then that data will automagically, I only found that recently, he hates that word. So.
I have a lot of issues.
So we're going to keep using it. So what does that look like when that data lands in here? So we're going to take a look at some generated GA information in GA sessions. It'll show up as GA_sessions with some identifier. And in here, you'll have all the schema information like visitor IDs, the visit start time, the visit IDs, and so on. So when we preview that data, it looks a little different. what you'll have is a top row and then all of these grayed out areas. And the reason why this occurs is something that we call repeated fields or nested fields within BigQuery. It's kind of like how you lump together things in a JSON object where you kind of have a little bit of tree structure. And how that I'll explain that within GA is essentially this top row, it represents all the sessions that occur, one session that occurred for your user. And in there, as I scroll over to the right, the hits within that one session that are shown here are basically repeated fields for that one top-line session. So when you do a query, you actually can run it on, say, that top line and that unnested portion to get just the session information. And then you can expand that and unnest it to actually get the hit information. So why we do that within BigQuery is really to save you money on that data storage. But often for us, what we like to do is we like to simplify that structure. So one of the key pieces that we do is typically we flatten this data structure and make it easier to query against. Because as soon as you do something like flatten it, so in here we have the example of how it's flattened with all the hit information, then we can start doing things that are Windows-based. And what windowing features are within BigQuery is essentially being able to look across rows. And so you're able to jump from one row to the other and read across essentially over a visit ID or a user ID. And that's where that powerful analysis comes in from when we're analyzing via user IDs or specific sessions and using it to base that on our time analysis. Great. So we can flip back to the slides, and then Vikram's going to cover preparing data.
Thank you. So now we have our Google data in BigQuery, and we can use our trusted Google Cloud partners or our in-house developers to get our other data like CRM, hotel properties, all that stuff into BigQuery using our available APIs and ETL methods. But now we have to prepare the data for analysis, right? That's something that no one likes to do. It's never as fun or sexy as the actual data analysis. But it's critical, right? 80% of a data analyst's time could be spent on just cleaning the data and preparing it. And our goal is to try to give you some of that time back to do whatever data analysts like to do. So to show you that, I'm going to walk you through a tool called Google Cloud Dataprep. And that's essentially a data wrangling tool. So what's data wrangling? Think of all the annoying stuff you have to do to the data before it's usable. Checking for outliers, mismatched data, extracting key value pairs, transforming columns, even joining data sets so you have a single denormalized view that's easy to work with. This is all stuff that would typically be done with a series of hand-coded scripts, ETL pipelines, and MapReduce jobs. And what Dataprep does, which is really cool, is it offers an alternative to that, where you don't have to write any code. It's all a UI-based interface, and it empowers less technical users to be able to do that data analysis and get off and running with the data. And so now we'll switch over to the demo, and we'll walk you through it. So before we switch over to Dataprep, I just want to show that, OK, we've got the data loaded in. So we have our CRM data here, our list of customers. We can see that there's all the stuff that you would expect, where they live. These are all fake names and contact information, by the way. Where they live, some of the demographic information about them, their preferences, loyalty status, all of that. We have our sales transactions. We have direct sales. These are sales which were made directly with us, right? And then we also have affiliate sales, which may have been made through, for example, travel agents or OTAs. And we can see that there's different booking channels and the dates of the transactions. And all that data is now sitting in BigQuery, ready for analysis, almost. So let's pull up Cloud Dataprep. And so when you go to the home screen of Dataprep, this is what you're kind of met with. And the whole concept of Dataprep, it's centered around something called flows. And flows are just series of transformations that you do on your data. And the specific steps that make up a flow are called recipes. And so what we want to do is create our own flow. And what we're going to do here is actually do some manipulation of our CRM data, our customer data. So we're going to create this flow. And so the nice thing is this actually integrates seamlessly with BigQuery and Google Cloud Storage, and you can pull in data sets easily for analysis. And so what we're going to do now is just pop into our BigQuery just via data flow. I'm going to go down to our data set. And we're going to find the customer data that we wanted to analyze, that we wanted to clean up, rather. OK. So we get a nice little preview here. OK, that looks like what I was trying to select. And we're going to import this, and we're going to add this to our flow that we're creating, right? So now we have a data set. And this is sort of the input into our flow. The output will be sort of our desired end state data set. And so what I'm going to do now is click this and edit this recipe. So that loads in. And now what we have here is a really nice summary view that Dataprep has provided for us, right? So you can see that it's sort of giving us some nice histograms on the distributions that exist in the data. It's done some cool stuff like infer the data types automatically based off of the patterns in the data. So, I mean, it knows that this is an email column, and it's figured that out. It knows here, for example, that these are state columns. These are state values, so it knows that it's a geographic column. We can dive in and go to the column details and get even more statistics, and even a map, for example. So right now, we can even start to see, like, where do most of our customers live? Looks like New York, Illinois, California are the big ones. And so we get a lot of really nice information about our data set. And so the other thing it does is, if you look here, the email column actually had, it called out the fact that there were some mismatched values, right? And so let's dig into that a little bit more. Why has Dataprep flagged this? So if you look at the column details, you can see the mismatched values here. And in this case, there were some typos. Maybe there was an issue with our data validation further upstream. Whatever. We have some dirty data now, and we got to fix that, right? And so what we can do is go back here. And now we just select this data, select the part that looked amiss, all the cases with double @ symbols. We want to, we don't have to throw out this data, though you can do that. In this case, what we want to do is simply replace that with a single @ symbol. So because I've highlighted the data, it's come up with a number of suggestions for me automatically just based off of what I've selected. And this is a simple example, but it can get more complex. For example, extracting key value pairs. You just select a few, and it'll know exactly what to pull out. And so we're going to edit this recipe step. We're going to replace all the double @ symbols with a single one. We're going to add this recipe. And so that's just one example of what you can do. You can do tons of other stuff: extractions, counting, splitting columns based on certain values, merging, pivoting, you name it. Well, for now, we're just going to do this, and we're going to click Run Job. And so the output of this can either go to a CSV on cloud storage, or it can go right back to BigQuery. So you can see you can choose a couple different options here. In this case, I'm just going to write out to a CSV since I don't want to clobber Alistair's demo. And we're going to run the job. OK, so what's going on now? So all the UI manipulations that we've done to say what we want to do, and the system is taking that in, and it's generating something called a pipeline is something called data flow. And data flow is essentially Google's version of Apache Beam, which is a data processing paradigm. And that is used essentially for production scale data processing pipelines. And so what I've done here, just by clicking a few buttons, is actually generate my own data processing pipeline that's production grade that could work on 1,000 rows or 1 billion rows. And so we can actually see the data flow job that this has spawned. And so this is actually all the steps for the data flow jobs that were created automatically by the system. And the reason this is so complex is because this will scale. The same data pipeline can work on data sets small and large. Going back here, you can see other flows. You can do more complex things like joining data together. We can join hotel data with sales data with online engagement data. And so this becomes a very powerful tool to enable your data analysts to just start analyzing data. You can schedule jobs, for example, and have regularly recurring pipelines. And so ultimately, this UI-driven approach is really, really powerful because it democratizes the ability to use this data. All right, so now we can switch back to our slides. And so now that we have our data in and it's clean and it's ready to go, we want to use that data to identify the right approach to drive profitability. So earlier on, we had a hunch that driving direct purchases was the right thing to do. And if direct sales are indeed more profitable, we want to know how much more so. In other words, is this notion of driving direct sales actually a good use of our time, or is my boss just going to yell at me for wasting my time? And intuition is fine and dandy, but ultimately we should validate this with data, right? That's what we're all about. And luckily we've got that data in BigQuery, it's clean, and we can start to analyze it to answer this question. We can switch back to the demo.
So this is the geekiest part of our talk. If you hang through this, we've got a few more jokes that we're going to line up for you. So
I think they might prefer the queries.
Exactly. Hang in there, no bathroom breaks for the next 15 minutes.
So what I've got here is essentially a query that aims to answer that question, right? And what we want to do is calculate an effective rate to figure out how much are we paying these affiliates for the traffic that they're driving, for the sales that they're driving for us, and compare and contrast that with the discount that we're giving people to book directly with us. So in this query, we're actually combining our affiliate sales data, we're combining our direct sales data, and we're joining that with our CRM data to understand loyalty status, right? And so combining all these together, we can run this query. Okay? And so now we've arrived at two different effective fee ratios, right? So what we found is that for our affiliate hotel bookings, we're essentially paying 15% of our bookings just to get that traffic. And that represents an opportunity of almost $2.2 million in the last year. So that to me validates that this is a $2 million problem. I think that's a good use of my time.
It's not quite $5 billion. Getting there.
Okay, great. So we can switch back to the slides, and we know that this is something that we actually want to go after. So now that we know that we want to drive direct sales, how do we actually get more people to book direct? So one thing we can consider is, does loyalty status have any effect on it, right? So as we saw before, we're giving a 5% discount to loyalty members for people to book direct with us. So let's see what happens. Is the fact that someone is a loyalty member, does that actually affect whether they book direct or not? Let's find out. We'll switch back to the demo. All right, so I have another query here which aims to answer that question. All right, so this is operating off of much of the same data. We're looking at sales data, but we're just cutting it in a different way, right? And now we're bringing in that CRM data to understand loyalty status. So we're going to cut things by loyalty status. Okay, so now we can see that for any given person who's going to book, right, if they are a member, looking historically, there was a 66.8% chance that they were going to book direct, right? And if that person was a non-member, looking back historically, there was a 52% chance that they were going to book direct. So 14% more likely to book direct if they were a member. So that leads me to believe that maybe we should be driving more memberships so that people will book directly. So okay, that satisfies me. I've kind of framed the business problem with the data, with these queries. And actually, writing SQL queries is not the only way you can do this exploration and interact with the data, right? We also have a tool called Data Studio. And what Data Studio is it's a visualization environment where you can build visualizations, charts, plots that answer questions like, where are your bookings coming from? How much were my acquisition costs? How do booking transactions vary over time? And you can put filters and analyze this in a bunch of different ways where you don't have to necessarily write SQL to be able to do this. And this actually works seamlessly with BigQuery. And so that's a nice alternative for people who don't want to write SQL or don't have the interest to do that. All right, we can go back to the slides. So we figured out our approach, right? Driving direct bookings is indeed the right thing to do, right? And the way we want to go about it is, indeed, we want to drive loyalty membership signups. So how do we put that into action? Well, we'll do that with some marketing and GCP. So the goal of our marketing campaign is to drive loyalty signups for Next Hotels. Now, for this campaign, we could target everyone in the US, but we're a little bit more savvy than that. We know that not everyone is equally likely to sign up for our loyalty program. And we could be a little bit smarter, right? We could use approaches like narrow our targeting, like location targeting, demographic targeting, that kind of thing. But ultimately, with the data that we have and a sprinkling of machine learning, I think we can be even smarter. So let's take a new user, right, who's coming onto our website and interacting with the Next Hotels brand. They're browsing around, they're playing with our website. And so we can ask, given everything we know about that user, how likely are they to convert to become a loyalty member? And for that user, we have a range of informational signals about them, right? We have the method by which they got to our website. Did they click on a paid search ad, or was it an organic search? What keyword did they search and end up clicking on to get to the hotel? Did they search for hotels with the best towels, or hotels with free breakfast? Or
You were not going to tell them about my towel failure.
or the device type, like were they coming to your website on mobile? How much time did they spend? All the engagement information that we know, right? Which hotel properties did they look at, and what was the value of those properties? And so we could use this range of signals to try to infer how likely is that particular user to become a loyalty member. So how can we do this? Well, one way is to use a machine learning model, right? And so we feed in all of these signals into the machine learning model, and the model will output to us a likelihood of whether this person is going to become a loyalty member or not, based off of the way they've interacted with our website. And how is that model trained? It's looked at a bunch of other people who've come to the website before, looked at the way they've interacted, and seen whether they've become a loyalty member or not. And it's taken all those instances together and trained on that, and that's what it's using when we see a new user who comes in with all these signals to figure out what the likelihood is. And so you can imagine we can take the process we just saw, taking those signals, feeding them into the ML-powered brain, spitting out that probability that the person is a member. Imagine we do that for every single non-member that's interacted with the Next Hotels website. So we can start to get a distribution that maybe looks something like this. We can start to identify groups of customers that are more likely to become loyalty members than others. So the original question was, who do we market to, right? This is a marketing campaign. This is where business logic comes into play. So one option, is to target people with a very low likelihood of conversion. Realistically, these people are not going to become loyalty members anytime soon. Maybe we need something else like a brand campaign to speak to them. On the other hand, we could target people who are very highly likely to convert. But if you think about it, these are people who are probably going to convert anyway, and maybe it's not the best use of our marketing dollars. They don't need that nudge from us. Okay, so maybe this is our sweet spot, right in the middle. They've interacted with us to some extent. We think they're just on that tipping point of becoming loyalty members. And that's where we want to direct our marketing efforts. And I should point out that this is just one particular approach, right? This is where your marketing sort of hat comes on, and this could vary based off of what your individual goals are. But the takeaway is that you can use all of these online engagement signals to identify who your target audience is.
Nice.
So, now that we've mapped out our approach to identifying our target audience, let's put that into action, right? So to do that, I'm going to show you a tool called Cloud Datalab. Datalab is a way to run standard Python code in the form of Jupyter IPython notebooks on Google Cloud with seamless connections into our tools like BigQuery and cloud storage. This means you can use the standard Python syntax that you know and love and all the industry standard libraries that you've used for data analysis, TensorFlow, Pandas, NumPy, Scikit, the list goes on, right? This is standard, and it allows you to work easily with the data that's stored in BigQuery. All right, so if we can switch back to the demo. All right, so now this is what a Datalab notebook looks like. It looks like a standard Jupyter notebook, and that's kind of what's cool about it, right? It's just running the Jupyter notebook in the cloud. But there are some cool things which I'll point out. So the first thing we want to do, right, is identify our training set for that machine learning model, and that's going to take the variety of users who've come to our website, the engagement signals that we've got about them, and a label as to whether that person ended up becoming a member or a non-member. And this allows us to build a supervised machine learning model to figure out likelihood of membership. And so we're going to very easily here, with this unique syntax, pull the data in with this inline SQL query directly from BigQuery. We're just querying our Google Analytics data that Alistair showed us how to get in there. And it's going to dump it into a Pandas data frame, right? Standard stuff, easy for analysis. So now we've got this data in. Let's take a look at what it looks like. So we have our full visitor ID. That's basically the GA Google Analytics cookie ID. It's sort of a proxy for the individual user.
I see my keyword, cheap accommodations. I don't see towels, though.
Yeah. Nothing with towels.
Well,
yeah.
what were you telling me? It's not just how soft they were, but size matters on towels, right?
So then we have the variety of other engagement signals. You know, the medium by which people came, organic versus CPC, the device category, the page views. Maybe they've done purchases before as a guest. You know, and so all of these signals together we have, and we're going to use them to build our model. And note that some of these users may be in our CRM system. We have CRM data on some of them, others we don't, right? That's all going to be part of building our model. So again, we're using standard Pandas stuff. We can describe this data frame, get some information about what data we have in there. And now before we build our model, we need to prepare our data. We need to make sure that the data is in a state that's as useful as possible for the model. And so one thing we're going to do here is process our features, right? We're going to look at all the keywords that people have searched for and roll them up into a higher level keyword category. This is to reduce the complexity of our model. We do some other cleanup, like recoding categorical features. So, converting strings into numbers that our model can actually process. And then, resolving missing values. This is all standard cleanup stuff and stuff that you would do if you were, doing this locally.
Why not use that in Dataprep?
You can, yeah. It's really about, and this is to show that you can do those if you're familiar with Python, and if that's the environment you prefer, do it there. If you prefer to do it in a WYSIWYG environment, do it in Dataprep. And so finally, we want to specify the features to be used for our model. So we had CRM data for some of the users, but we want to leave that off, right? Because our goal is to take new users who've only engaged with the website and use only those signals to be able to do our prediction of whether they're going to become a loyalty member or not. Okay, so finally, after all of this, we can go ahead and build our model. And in this case, we're going to use a logistic regression model. And, in essence, it's a way to explain the relationship between a bunch of independent variables, which is, in our case, the engagement signals, the Google Analytics engagement signals, and a dependent binary variable, which is this person going to become a loyalty member or not? And so we've gone ahead and built our model. And so build our model, and then we run it on essentially a bunch of unseen users, right? These are users who've just come on. All we know about them is the engagement signals, and we run them through our model that's been trained, and we essentially get our list of our target audience, right? These are the full visitor IDs of the people that we want to target. And notice that here we're gating that probability, like we said before, to right in that sweet spot, right? 51% to 59%, right? That's our sweet spot. And we can see the features that were used to come up with this model. And so here's our target audience. Now, in practice, you would want to validate the quality of your model. You would want to do some tuning. You would want to use receiver operating curves just to evaluate the quality of your model and figure out where to put your threshold. But in this case, I think that the powerful thing is basically we've used that online engagement data to whittle down and winnow down our entire potential customer base to the people that we actually want to target. All right, and we can go back to the slides.
All right, segmentation and personalization. So we have those user IDs, so now what do we do with them? So back to our example with home sharing companies, you have competition like Airbnb that really has been making strong inroads on the accommodation industry. So for our next hotels to compete, we really have to personalize with it. So with that, companies have important information. They've got purchase history, they have customer profiles. Next Hotels knows about my towels fetishes, so they'll add that with the offline campaign information. You have all this great data. It's really important now to act on it. So target on it, and also to provide personalization. So Vikram talked about that 40 to 60% that we want to target and really have that become our loyalty customers. So we're going to separate that audience. So the way we do that is looking at the hotel properties we have, we want to segment that audience into business travelers, couples on holidays, family vacationers, millennial spring breakers, right there. And so we've got our creative message as well. And they're going to speak differently to each audience. The first one on my left, or actually on my right, is about the double points on all weekday stays in March. And they're all about the same time period, but really when directly booking. We talked about how important it was not to go through affiliates for those sales and actually to be able to help recover some of the $5 billion back. So the first one targeted to that. The second one speaks more to the family. The third one to our couples. And also, finally, millennials. I had a more risque image, but he wisely told me to change that. So happy to stay employed on here. So take that all, put that together with our audience, and we finally can target our members. And we're going to show that to you through a scenario where we're using machine learning to do that. So what's our scenario? Our customers are filling out loyalty information when they sign up. Only about 50% of them will submit some of those optional data points or details. So whether they're married or have children. We know that there's a correlation between certain search keywords and also flags that we're going to use for segmentation. We're going to use for that training data the customers who provided the optional loyalty data, and then we're going to predict that is married flag or has children flag for those customers who did not provide that. And so an example of that is like kid-friendly hotel. A search for that should really mean that the person has children. I mean, I really hope so on there. And so like beach party hotel as well. I mean, I hope that person's married too. So lots of questions, if not. So correlated to our millennial crowd on there. So, and then as Vikram showed you earlier on there, how to segment that data, I want to be able to show it in a different way. So there's a new beta product that was just announced today. It's called BigQuery ML, and it really helps simplify that machine learning process. So what does BigQuery ML do for us? It actually, with just a few keywords, so create model, in SQL language, it's going to quickly build that model for you. It's really as simple as that one line. To predict a model, it's ml.predict. And that function is going to basically do the prediction of that model for you. ML evaluate, it gives you all those common metrics for those models. And then finally, right now, we only have it for linear and logistical regression, but we're really working hard to add different models as well, random forest and other tree-based methods. So what we have there on top of that is functionality that through the BQ UI, through the BQ command line, through the REST API, and Jupyter Notebooks or Datalab notebooks or other business intelligence tools, you're going to run those commands. So SQL on a slide, just really quickly on here, we're going to run through it. That first line on that hash standard SQL, it's actually a little secret reserved keyword that says, and if you've worked in BigQuery, you get the annoying pop-up message about legacy SQL. It actually ignores that flag in legacy SQL and will run the rest of that session of queries in standard SQL.
I only learned that when we did that last week in rehearsal, so it's pretty cool.
Gray hair, man. That's what does it for you in there. So that next line is create or replace that model. And that's all it is. You specify the location of where that model sits within BigQuery. The options let you customize, and really, I mean, I look at it, customize equals personalize. So it's personalized to you. You choose the model. You can choose things like in this example, the maximum number of iterations. 20 is the default. 25 goes higher. It costs more, but it's more accurate. And you can go less as well. And then the select statement, it shows up. In this case, we're doing if that marital status is not married, you put a 0 in there or a 1, and you set that as label. And the as label is a special keyword. That means I want to predict this later on. So when you see that as label, it means I want to predict that. Then everything else after that is called feature selection, where it's basically all the inputs that lead into your model. And the only thing we did here for simplicity's sake is what keyword drove what user. And the from is just where my data sits. And finally, this where clause of marital status not equal to NA means that for my training data here, do not put the people who didn't give me marital status. Later on, I'm going to use it to predict. So instead here, utilize for my training data the people who have given me marital status. So we're actually going to go into the demo now. Don't mind skipping it. So in the demo portion, I will go to my project queries. And in here, just to show you, we're going to quickly run and create a model. And it has pretty much taken about a minute and a half to run. And this is for 10 iterations. And it was exactly what I ran through on the slides. And so what I'll show you as this is running is I'll take a look at the predictor. And it's equally as simple. So in the predictor itself, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, there is that standard hashtag standard SQL, the select star, and all you have to put in there is the from clause, ML_predict, and the model location. And from here, I select the marital status as label, and that means predict that. Predict that based on that keyword. And then the from the location of that query. So that's all it takes. Our query is running, and so I'll actually show you in the data set itself what is in the BQ ML location. So in the BQ ML location of where I store the model, we'll take a look at that marital status data. So it actually gives you all the interesting information. It just completed. Actually, it's a little faster, 78 seconds, so that's pretty cool. So why don't we do that? Since the model has just run, we'll take a look at that has children model then in there. it actually, what's really interesting in here, it tells you those training stats. And it'll tell you, in the case of what I had, I ran it for 10 iterations, and it tells you each number of completions. It gives you information about that training data loss, evaluating the data loss, that learning rate, and also its completion time. So it'll give you a nice idea about how much computational power it's taking and how much your build will be. So from here, we have that information. We're going to go back to the queries itself. And then I'm going to show you in here what that predictor actually does. So I'll go ahead. I'll run that prediction status on here. And so on the top, on the leftmost side of the screen, we have predict_label, and that is 0. So essentially, for our marital status, we're saying not married when keywords show up, such as party resorts. And then, on contrast, if you're searching for things like budget family vacation, that's a high likelihood that you are married. So going back to our queries, we're going to put that all together. And we have a query here that will essentially add 2 additional fields, this inferred marital status and this inferred has children status, to our overall table with that CRM data. So what does that look like? So going back to that information and looking at that table, it's essentially 2 more columns now that I get to actually do my targeting and my activation. So inferred marital status is being married, and inferred has children as true or false in these instances. All right, so if we didn't mind, if we can go back to the presentation on how to activate, and you were commenting earlier how I took the
I was
easy
like,
route.
I mean, yeah, you took 18 lines to do the logistic regression model, and the thing I showed took like 200 lines.
Yeah.
No wonder you signed up for this part.
Yeah, I'm not into heavy lifting, man. But I know you didn't do heavy lifting.
Hey, whoa.
Now, a shout out both to Pratik and Chef, who on our team actually put a lot of this together with the Datalab portion and generating the GA simulated data. So we really
Definitely
appreciate their help on that. All right, so now activation. And really quickly on those, so again, AdWords is now Google Ads, and you can use Customer Match, a product in there for it. Google Analytics is Analytics 360, Data Import, and Measurement Protocol are the two features that you can use there. And then formerly known as DoubleClick Bid Manager is now Display and Video 360, and you can use a product in there called Custom Algorithms to do that. So to dig into that a little deeper, within Google Ads Customer Match, the biggest takeaway that I have from here is reach. So search, YouTube, Gmail, it's cross-device, and it gives you a tremendous amount of reach to be able to do that remarketing. And so how does it actually work? All you really need to do is upload first-party data, such as an email address, into Google Ads. And then those lists are uploaded in a privacy-safe and hash method. Google Ads then matches those email addresses to Google accounts. And once those lists are created, we actually discard all that data. You target, and then you can target or you can exclude those audience lists to do positive or negative targeting on your devices cross-channel via search, Gmail, and YouTube again. And then Google Ads finally can generate similar audiences from that original email list when it's eligible, and currently only for Gmail and YouTube. So Display Video 360, custom algorithms. The key takeaway there, it's really to customize that algorithm, that DBM, formerly named. You could tweak that bid model. So how do you really do that? Essentially, first thing you do is you have to score those data transfer impressions. You build your model with offline data, to score those bids. And then you calculate a target goal for it. Then you load the CSV file with auction IDs with the scored impression value into a Google Cloud Storage bucket. And then finally, you contact the GMP, or basically the DoubleClick account manager, and they'll work with you to activate custom algorithms. And then for Analytics 360, so you can use data import to do it, and you can also use measurement protocol. So both will allow you then to create custom audiences, both in Google Ads and GMP, so basically AdWords and DoubleClick. And I think of data import as essentially the CSV uploader that works batch, and then measurement protocol as the streaming piece. That's really hit by hit, HTTP level. You can kind of use a curl command for that. And then we'll go through a really quick demo of analytics for data import as well. So all I wanted to show you is really where it is. So if we're back in our home screen, we then would click the admin button. And in the admin button, in here, near the bottom of the middle is data import. And so from here, all you have to do is hit create. You can select essentially what your data is. I usually select custom data, hit continue. There's an import behavior, and we usually click query time, so it can go back through some historic data. Hit continue. I'm not going to go through the rest of that particular portion, but essentially, once you set it up, specify the schema of it, link it to your custom dimension, then you're going to be able to essentially manage your upload. So this is where you would hit to upload a new set of files. And then your next question is, can I schedule that? There is APIs, part of GA, where you can schedule that upload, but essentially, I would also take a look at measurement protocol in that case to do that streaming type of service to be able to add that component. So once we have those lists uploaded, then we're going to quickly take a look at audience definitions. So this is where that segmentation actually lives, in audiences. And right here, we can just specify from here, just really quickly from that specific screen, when I create new, I'm looking at conditions, and inside conditions, I would then select a little further custom dimensions. And most likely, you'll have information like my underscore customer ID located around here. So that's just a quick demo of that particular portion, so you can switch back to our slides. Thanks. So now that we've placed those audiences there, segmented the whole thing, done all the pieces, don't forget that last step. This is how we're actually measured or paid by. We need to make sure that we run split testing and A/B testing. And it's really important because at the end of the day, people are going to ask us, with all this effort, so like how much better did we do with personalization? And luckily, Google actually has some tools to make that easier for us. So within AdWords, Google Ads, essentially this first preview screen is a image of the A/B testing, and in here, this creative is targeting more to our business traveler. And on the left-hand side, we can actually have even more targeted or personalized messaging and wording as well. Our next screen is essentially the same thing for our next hotels, but a more generic message as well. And so we're going to quickly go back to the demo to actually show you where that is within the Google Ads or AdWords UI as well. So in here, all it really is this draft and experiments. So you might have heard of our magical $1 a day accounts. So I use Vikrams. So we get, as Googlers, we get $1 a day every day to spend on AdWords to do our testing. So it's a little interesting feature for us in there. But all it is draft and experiments. And when we click into it for draft and experiments, we can see our ad group. for essentially that in all of our ad creatives. And it got disapproved. You ticked somebody off in AdWords when you left, didn't you?
Might have.
Right. Yeah, so trust us, we even get disapproved ads, but this one says destination not working on here. But it's basically that particular screen and that area where you can go ahead and do that A/B testing really easily within Google Ads as well. All right, so we're back to the slides again, and you got to take us home, Vikram. Those buses are leaving for chain smokers, man.
Oh, the real marketing experts. Okay.
All right, come on.
All right. So, in conclusion, this is kind of what we promised you in a very nebulous way, right? You come here, attend next, do some stuff, learn some stuff, and eventually you'll better understand your customers and profit. And so maybe we can unpack a little bit of what that stuff is, right? Just recap what all that stuff is.
That's a reference to Underpants Gnomes.
Any
right?
South Park fans, yeah.
Yeah, we are big South Park fans on the team.
So we showed you how to bring your data together easily in GCP. This is your Google data, very simply as Alex just showed, and your non-Google data as well. Use that data to frame your business problems, figure out what you want to tackle. Is it worth tackling? Then identify and engage the right customers, figure out who your audience is, basically, and then personalize the way you engage with that audience based off of attributes that you either know about them or can infer about them. Finally, executing a marketing campaign with Google Marketing Platform. And then this all actually forms a little bit of a virtuous cycle, right? With the marketing campaign that you've run, you can use some of the data transfer services that we have to bring that data back in, analyze the performance of that campaign, and then iterate from there and keep improving your marketing campaign.